Hello. So, Andean music, where do we start? We know for a fact that people in the Andes have been using panpipes and trumpets and flutes for thousands of years. Panpipes are found throughout the world, but in the Andes, there is probably the largest variety of panpipes, ranging from the really tall ones, like maybe 4.5 feet tall, toyos in Bolivia, to the little chulis in Ecuador, or payas rather, in Ecuador, which are about 3.5 inches in length. They're mostly made. Panpipes are mostly made from bamboo nowadays, but they have been made in carved in stone, ceramic, even condor feathers, which are hollowed, so they're perfect to get that sound. Um, this is a replica from unearthed from an ancient, very old flute, vertical flute, quena. And what's interesting is that the oldest, the older instruments um, are not in tune. They're not well tuned because for the Western ears, we have what a concept of music. It's different. So there was music developed for the church, and there are professional musicians in the Western traditions. There are systems of music writing and music theory that has been developed because music was a profession, and so people have been working on music theory for many centuries. But in the Andes, there is not that distinction between musicians and audience. So a person just happens to know how to play an instrument because they want to join a celebration. Celebrations take place during like big festivals, harvest, planting, other celebrations related to the sun, the moon, the stars, and the cosmos in general. So this flute, it's called quenacho. Also, there are so many variations of this flute. They vary in size and tuning, and the mouthpiece. This one is a very interesting. Has a closed top and just a little notch right here. Most of them are open on both ends with just a little notch right here. And there are many types of flutes found throughout the Andes in what today is Bolivia, Ecuador, Peru, Argentina, Chile, that whole area. So traditional music has been played for thousands of years in that area using only wind and percussion instruments. Big drums, usually called huancaras, made from animal skin. Nowadays, mostly goat, but llama or any camelid, and tree and wood. So nowadays they're made with goats because it's very elastic, very light. Cow skin is never used because it's too heavy, too tough, and it won't give you a good sound. But like I said, traditional music is played only with wind and percussion instruments. And then we have, I guess you could call it also traditional music, but it's post Hispanic. So after the Spaniards arrived, the music changed because of the Spanish influence. They also brought string instruments which were not found in the Andes. Mainly the Baroque guitar, the lute, and the Renaissance guitar are probably or are considered as the ancestors of many Andean instruments that were created in the Andes after the conquest. So one of them, or probably the most well known, is the charango. So here's a charango. It's made, or traditionally it has been made, with the shell of an armadillo as the sound box. And originally it had gut strings. So the reason we think now, also they were also made out of carved, like a block of wood hollowed out and carved in the shape, in this shape. And the reason for that is because probably that the luthiers or whoever, when the natives started to make these instruments, they didn't have the tools and the technology and the knowledge to make really thin planks of wood, as it's required to make a classical guitar or one of those instruments. And at the time, I can imagine, as you can imagine, those tools were really hard to come by. Like, you would need like specialized kinds of saws and heat to bend the wood. All those things, those are technologies that the European luthiers had. So this type of carved out instrument is found in Puerto Rico with the Puerto Rican cuatro. In Mexico, there are several other examples. So in Bolivia, and also in Mexico, in Bolivia and Peru and that region, they started using the armadillo shell to substitute a carved wooden box. Okay, so then a little more recent is the ronroco, which is a larger version of the charango. So this one I carved out of a piece of several pieces of wood glued together to make this instrument. And this is more or less the way it sounds. So after the arrival of the Spaniards, of course, and when the natives heard the string instruments and they started to make their own versions of these instruments, of course, the music in the Andes changed. The charango is believed to have been built around the beginning of the 1800s, maybe a little earlier. So from that point on, and especially in the cities, you will see the mixture of wind instruments and percussion, and the addition of the string instruments. So that's a little bit more recent. Now, what's interesting is that both kinds of music are still played. You can find troops of flute and panpipes players in the remote communities of the Andes still performing the music as they have been for thousands of years. And you can find an ensemble of Andean musicians playing on the streets of Paris or New York with a mixture of instruments and musical styles that have been incorporated mostly in the cities. And it's hard to draw a line where the traditions, real true traditional music begins and ends. Everything is so dynamic and changing. What's for certain is that there are certain elements in traditional music, not just in Andean music, but in world music, that are present still in the Andes, such as the use of music in a musical context, in a community context where usually there's not audience and performers, because music it was an organic part of community celebrations, and it only became a specialized subject in Europe, and now it's of course throughout the world. But that's in a nutshell what the music of the Andes is all about.